thing is, for example, the Taxify, when they entered the Ukrainian market, you already had all these partners in place.
Yeah,
and these partners said, okay, guys, who wants to work with Taxify? Here's our...
At some point, of course. I mean, it was not my problem anymore. I left Uber by that time already. But I mean, again, we can deep dive into that. We can make it a separate subject of a separate conversation. So, going back to kind of to the logic of creating and looking at strategy. I looked at the market first on the various kind of, again, it's a top level thing. So right, kind of whenever you convey a vision, first you do the top level thing. So key elements, this is the commercial part. So what is the market like in terms of the supply, regulation, etc. Now I deep dive specifically into regulation because again, it's a very important element. Uber had tons of issues with regulators in different markets. So I wanted to make sure kind of they understand that I understand the regulatory landscape and kind of how we're going to be practically what we're going to be doing. And I said, yeah, I know that there are 3 types of licensing, and then kind of this is the licenses that we're going to go for. These are the key authorities that we need to be in contact with, and so on and so forth. And some of the kind of key takeaways from that. Then I explained to them the market because again, I wanted to make sure they understand that I understand the market very well. Obviously, because I'll have to be competing in that market. And so I kind of I said, yeah. So basically, Uber is already here. It's just not Uber in the same sense. So and that was true. So in fact, what happened basically, Kyiv already had Uber. It was just kind of 20th century Uber. It was very insightful for me to do this assignment because I also learned a lot of things, how they operate. So this smart guy, I don't remember his name, who created, later on, who created Uklon. Before he created Uklon, he created this system called EVOS, EVOS, which was the electronic exchange of orders for taxi companies. So whenever you, like back then, when you called a taxi company, which was effectively a dispatcher, right? In most cases, they didn't own cars. All you needed to create a taxi company was an apartment, a phone, and a girl on that phone, right? You called the taxi company. What that girl did was she sat at the computer, she typed in the order, and the guys in the cars, all of them basically, who were connected to this server, received that order. So if you remember riding with drivers, they had these phones where they had like tons of addresses like going through all the time. That's exactly what was happening. They're connected to one or few servers where the orders come in from the phone. They get here, and then they get to the individual taxi drivers. And the taxi driver basically decides, it's either like who's the fastest or who likes, this or that direction, on whichever basis. And if for some reason this exchange server kind of with this number of cars did not serve your purpose and no one took your order, then your order went to all of the other exchange servers. And so there were 7 of them. And if one of those guys took the order, then he would just pay you the commission. There was like a commission fee for accepting your order.
It was very common when you call one service and then the taxi from the other service came.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm checking with partners.
Exactly. That's exactly how it worked. That's exactly how it worked. So yeah, they kind of most of the servers worked with EVOS, and they were owned either by EVOS or taxi companies. And in the one taxi dispatcher was connected to up to 5 different servers. So that's exactly what you're talking about. So then I kind of described that kind of the industry landscape, and most of you probably heard about Mr. Porter and his fabulous five forces, and we're going to be talking about them. Even though this is a concept which is kind of used and abused, I firmly believe, and most of people in strategy science believe, that even though it's kind of deceptively simple, it's still one of the best frameworks to analyze an industry. And again, we're going to be talking about them in more details, but I said, look, yeah, the threat of new entrants is very high. It's obviously, as I said, if you want to be a taxi driver, you just are a taxi driver, so you don't need anything. If you want to be a taxi company, you need an apartment, you need a phone, and you need a girl. Or you don't need a girl, you can be yourself, the dispatcher. That's it. That's how difficult it is to become a taxi company in Kiev, right? Rivalry is huge, again, because it's a very fragmented market, so tons of small dispatchers and taxi companies competing with each other. They're completely undifferentiated. There were maybe like one or two companies like Elite Taxi and then I don't know. Yeah, Express.
And those who launch electronic cars, yes.
Yeah, but they did not exist.
Oxy.
Oxy. But other than that, undifferentiated. You don't give a fuck which company you call. Most of us have like 10 or 15 taxi companies on our phones, right? So
you will get a
lot
anyway.
You call one, it's like no car, then you call the other, then you call the third, etc. Supply and power, low concentration, which is good, but also low switching costs, meaning that both the customers and the car drivers are, they're not concentrated. So there are tons of drivers, there are tons of customers, but at the same time, it's easy for them to switch. So loyalty does not exist, right? So no one is loyal to their taxi company, either from driver or rider side. And the threat of substitutes is fairly moderate, because on the one hand you have public transportation and you have private cars, but my vision at that time, I kind of was overly optimistic. I thought Kiev would be moving a lot faster to the direction of parking enforcement, first of all, because obviously if you think about it, if you know that there's going to be parking enforcement, it is a big enabler for Uber. I saw it in Moscow. I saw how progressively Uber, Yandex, and Get, gained traction when Moscow started severely enforcing parking regulations back in 2015. That's when they introduced, I must say, very good parking system, partly probably because it was developed by McKinsey. A few of my friends, they worked Moscow Department of Transportation. They hired McKinsey to develop the transportation strategy for Moscow, and they did a really good job. So Moscow City basically had, they skipped the Parkomat period. They went straight to the mobile phone element. But they had, what they did basically, they have like pieces of territory, and they have a sign which has a parking territory number. You park your car, there is a special app, you start a meter. So you don't pay in advance, you just start a meter, it starts clocking, and you pay by the minutes.
We have a couple of places like that in Kiev, but 2 months has passed and the guys are back and saying like, okay, you can pay me or you can pay with the app, and it's easier to pay the guy.
Yeah, so it wasn't, but yeah, this is always the case. Now, going back to the regulation thing, the regulations are only as good as the enforcement.
Yeah.
What Moscow did basically, they gave a very easy instrument to pay, very easy instrument to deal with, right? So because it's very easy, you park your car, you have the number, you just type in the number of that parking into the app, you go, it's going. And they had the cars patrolling each their own territory with a camera that scans your number and immediately checks in whether you're paid or not.
You're much more
You get the fine. You get the fine electronically. They don't write you the fine. You just get it electronically, and that's it.
That's why there was a lot of buzz about some restaurants putting some papers over the numbers of
Yes,
the flights.
and I was the bad guy who stopped that malicious practice. So, because I lived in downtown of Moscow, that's where they started this program. And like every day, I was walking to work or whatever, and I saw that exactly this. So drivers, it's not only the restaurants. The drivers, what they started doing, they started putting pieces of paper or like CDs on their number plates so that they're kind of covered. And I was like, that's interesting. So what I did, I called a buddy of mine who was in charge of this project from McKinsey, and I said, look, why don't you just get pedestrian, inspectors? Just people walking. People walk. They just get the sheet out, take the pictures, because the car cannot do that. Obviously, the car will not stop in a narrow street to try to do it, but the pedestrian guys, they will do that. So that's what they did, and that practice stopped. So my next element was to look at the online competition, because obviously, you look at the whole market, but then you have to understand, Uber is first and foremost the app, right? So how big is the app market? How big is the online market for rides, for the taxi services? And again, this is a combination of desktop research and field research. And the field research here was basically done in two ways, or three. One, the guys, the students, because they obviously each of them asked the driver whether the driver works with an online app. If yes, with which one, with how many aggregators, etc. Second, I did the consumer survey, so I messaged 70 of my Facebook friends. I did a special selection from various backgrounds, and I gave them the questionnaire, and I asked them to answer those questions. And I'll give you the results later on, because it was important for me to understand not only the supplier side, but also the demand side. So what are the consumers what do they want, what do they lack in the current situation? How happy are they with the status quo? And the third thing, I did my own, research. There are no wrong tools that you have that you can use. So for most of these apps, what I was doing, one way or the other, I found the founders of those apps. I called them. I said I was a professor at the Higher School of Economics, which I was. So technically, I didn't lie, and I said I was doing a research of taxi aggregators in Russia and Ukraine, and could you please answer me a few questions? And they did. So I learned pretty much how many cars. Sorry?
From competitors.
Yeah. Yeah. So they told me how many cars they have in the system, how many orders on average they have, etc., etc., etc. So yeah.
I normally say I'm a journalist.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how you do it. Obviously, that's how you do it, and that's what I learned. So I said, yeah, the market is very small. So the online was accounting for only about 70% of the total market, which was great because obviously there was tons room for potential. The only dominant player was Uklon, and there were like 40 other apps. I tried most of them, so I literally used them, tried to get a car, tried to ride with it, etc., etc., etc.
During the preparation or during this 1 week that you said?
No, during 1 week.
Oh. No wonder you had 4 hours.
Yeah. So this was my customer insights page. As I told you, I spoke to the customers, and I wanted to make sure I understand I asked them a few simple questions. So I asked them, what are the most important elements for you in your usage of taxi? And convenience and arrival time was by far the most important ones. I wanted to understand on the demand side what was the average. The questions were basically based on where would what are the features that I will target that customers are not getting, right? So Uber was definitely first and foremost about convenience and arrival time. It's about having a car quickly. Second, Uber is about quickness, as I said, and what I learned was that a fair share of cars arrived in 10 to 15 minutes, which was a lot. So Uber's average arrival time in more developed market at that time was under 5 minutes. So that was perfect again, because most of the customers are expecting this, but are getting this. So definitely a mismatch in terms of, the customer expectations. Again, by far the most desired feature was mobile app, and convenient mobile app, something that the customers were not really getting. And at the same time, customers say they want a mobile app, but the majority of them still order the car with a phone, which means that the mobile apps are not convenient to use. Then I switched to the drivers, and my students ask some simple questions to the drivers to make sure we understand what their pains are. Obviously, yes, as I said, these are the key figures that I wanted to get out of them. So how many days per month they're working, how many hours per day, average trips per day, average trips per hour, and the average fare. Because then you do the math. You know how much the guy is making. And I'll tell you why it was important. Because I had to switch the driver's thinking from a per trip to a per hour. It was a new concept to them. So I learned that a lot of drivers use like 2 or 3 different services, that the flexible schedule and quality of passengers was extremely important for the drivers. And that was, again, where Uber hit the checks, because the quality of passengers, obviously, for most of the drivers, quality meaning, first of all, security. And second, feedback. So the drivers couldn't do, first, they were not sure, who's going to get into their car. So they're getting a phone call, they have no idea who that guy is, right? Worse, if they're hailed on the street, then you have no idea at all, right? So in terms of crime, etc. So if you put all those things together, you have taxi drivers who are accepting calls from unknown people. They carry cash, because it's not cashless, it's cash. You get the recipe for potential, crimes, right? So the drivers are concerned about safety. Well, here we are, that's the safety part. Uber can give you the safety, guys, because every passenger is connected. You have the picture, you have the background, you can reject the order if you don't like, for example, the rating of the passenger, etc. Right? And the flexible schedule, it was extremely important here. Uber, again, tick the boxes, because, you can work in your own hours. And I also wanted to make sure there are enough people for whom this is going to be not the key job, but an extra income job. And 30% of people who drove for taxi said that it was their kind of extra income. So that was kind of my market intro part, breaking to the key elements, understanding the big picture, political, economic, regulatory, etc., understanding the market in general, understanding the supply side, understanding the demand side. So what do you do with it now? Now I said, let's deep dive into how we're going to be positioning ourselves and how we're going to be launching the market. And this was the slide that I created to show that I understand the key logic, the key premise behind Uber's logic. That the name of the game is scale up. In effect, what Uber is, it's a platform. Right? It's a so-called two-sided platform. Pretty common thing. I mean, Uber is not different in that respect than OLX or some other, matching platforms. And for any platform, it's the most important thing for the platform. What makes platforms successful?
Supply on both sides.
Supply and demand. So growth of both sides of the platform. Exactly. Yes. Now, where do you start?
With supply.
With the supply. It's the same as BlaBlaCar when started. They started with growing the supply side, number of drivers.
Yep.
And then you make some super promo for demand.
Why don't you just start with demand?
Sorry?
Why don't you start with
Because
demand?
they are like more, how to say, if I download Uber, I saw there is no taxi there, I deleted Uber. I don't want, I never use again.
Like professional taxi rider, I can say that if you have some, when you get a decline of your order, you stop trying.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think you can easily reach the supply side to your own side rather than to reach the demand side. A matter of the investment.
But this is actually what happened
in
to
this
Uber
situation-
in the first days.
Yeah. In this situation, it looks like the supply side is much more easily to reach.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. So, yeah, going back to your question, what happened? Yes.
This is actually what happened in
Yes.
the first days, because Uber started providing free trips,
Yeah.
and the demand was so high that you could barely find a car for yourself.
Yeah. Well, there are two things. One, no one expected, we had a record demand out of all EMEA markets, probably even the world's markets. Maybe China only had higher demand kind of per car.
Similar with the story of opening McDonald's in Ukraine.
Yeah. So, no matter how many cars we would have, the demand would still, overtake the supply by numbers. So that is absolutely true, because there was this joke, people were joking in the beginning that Klitschko let go of that car, so someone else can drive, because Klitschko was our rider zero, so he was the first kind of rider on Uber. Obviously we used that, as a PR and publicity, and he was also together with us at the press conference, which was very nice of him. So things like that, but yeah, that was one thing. So demand clearly, we had, before the launch, there were about 70,000 apps Uber app downloads in Kiev alone. During 2 days of the launch, we had another 70,000 downloads in 2 days. So obviously, yes, we couldn't deal with it no matter how many cars we would have. But in general, you're absolutely right. The point is, you start with the supply, because supply is easier to manage, and I'll tell you why and how we manage it. But yes. But what happens then? So the whole point is the whole virtuous circle. It's not just understanding that it's kind of a platform game. So what happens when the demand grows, supply grows, right? Because more people are seeing, more drivers are seeing that there are lots of people on the platform, and so they're kind of like, oh yeah, so there is money there, right? When the supply grows, the coverage extends. So you have more cars available at all the time in a larger and larger and larger portions of the city. We obviously started with the city center and then grew it extensively. So we first of all incentivized the people to be in the morning in the sleeping districts, in the afternoon in the city center, because this is where the majority of rides happen. The most interesting part, that's what follows. When you have a higher coverage, you obviously have faster pickups, because there are more cars in the vicinity and they can get to you faster. If there are more faster pickups, then again the demand grows. So that's the small circle. Now the larger circle, you have a higher coverage, and counterintuitively, the more cars are on the platform, the more money they make, even though the prices are low. Why is that? Because of the lower driver downtime. Because the driver can be in 3 different states. They can can wait for on an order, they can drive for an order, and they can be with the passenger. They can make money only in one case, which is when they are with the passenger, right? So for the driver, that's what I was mentioning before, switching the driver's mentality. The drivers used to be thinking in terms of per trip. So they were thinking, how much money am I going to make per trip? Right? And you have this special, still have this special cast of people at the railway station, right? We're waiting on their one and only lucky passenger who's going to pay them 500 hryvnia to go to Krishati, right? So most of the drivers used to think in a per trip basis. Switching them to this different mentality kind of took some time, but it worked because the point was to explain to people it doesn't matter how much you're getting per trip. What's important is how much you're getting per hour of your work.
But they're still struggling because they sometimes in other cities, maybe in Kiev, they try to call you and what is the point? Where are you going to? Yes, just tell me. Yes, still wanting.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a human factor. You cannot, you cannot avoid it, and it happens everywhere. There are lots of things that humans are capable of, and it's not only a problem of Kiev. You have that everywhere. But in general, the point was, the more cars on the platform, the less downtime. So the driver, on average, will be closer to the next passenger. The driver, on average, will be waiting, less time for the next passenger. So therefore, if they're per trip, their numbers, right? So that's what they have. My goal was to double this, to make it 1.7 trips on average per hour. All right? If you can double it and have a price, say 30% lower, you do the math. You're still making more money than you did before, even with the cost of fuel, because it's not progressive, right? So you double your utilization, but you reduce the price. You double your utilization, you reduce the price, you get more people using, and then the large virtuous circle again happens.
Yeah, but in such case, drivers should work more, and depreciation of their car is moving faster.
Sure.
Yes? Yes.
Still they earn more money.
No, they don't. Because it depends what we are comparing our revenue or net result. So if your depreciation of your car is moving faster, your car, the frequency of repair, of technical occupation of your car, it's future incremental costs.
But there is a question: what do you value? What is more costly, driver's time or depreciation of the car? And that's it.
I mean, you're right. It is a point, and it's.
Actually, if you return back to your slide where you calculated your hourly cost. Okay, so how many trips per day? 9. So average duration of trip is like 1 hour. Yes.
No, you may be standing.
That's exactly the point. See mistake?
No.
That's the average amount of time in general the trip costs you in time units. So on average, you pay 1 hour of your time for your trip. Out of that 1 hour, you're really making money only about 20 minutes, because that's what you drive. The rest, you get to the passenger and you wait on an order.
Yeah, I understand, but in figures, you're offering drivers to earn for this 1 hour 86 cents.
No. This is the driver assumptions. This is not what we're offering. This is what they used to be making. This is the market data. This is the snapshot. Yeah, I'll give you the driver economics. No. This is the data as is. So that was the pre-Uber data. So what I wanted to show was to say, okay, so here is what we have. Because Uber, as I said, Uber is a very data-driven company. Unfortunately, I don't have the screenshots with me. I cannot show you, but basically
I have 86 cents per hour. Actually,
average trips per hour. Average trips per hour.
duration.
No.
No.
It's 24 hours and you have like 20 drive.
That's
That's
amount of trips per hour.
Yeah, this is the amount of
Okay.
trips per hour. So in 1 hour, on average, the driver does less than 1 trip per hour. That's easy for you.
Okay.
See my point?
Yes.
So if you do this, multiply by this, you get an hourly rate. See?
Yeah.
So kind of 2.58. So that's that was the math. The reason I wanted to do it again, as I said, because basically the point is for Uber to see whether by incoming into the market, Uber can substantially increase the utilization of the drivers, but while at the same time beating the competitors on price. So I wanted to make sure I understand and I know that the kind of utilization of the drivers is low. And this is low. Again, this meant that on average a driver was making less than 1 trip per hour. In New York, this number is close to 2. So just to give you the idea, I think even higher than 2. Because what you have high density, you have lots of supply, and you have lots of cars, right? So at any given moment, whenever I was hailing an Uber in New York, I had to wait on average like
Yeah,
1
that's the
minute,
reason.
maybe.
There is like lack of supply to cars. So instead
No,
of
no, no, no.
just
No.
taking the passengers and delivering them to the endpoint, you need to spend time to get to the passengers.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the point. And it's, again, as I said, for most of people, unless they kind of get the concept, it seems counterintuitive, right? Because the intuition says there should be less drivers, so I would be making more money, right? The less people are competing with me, the more money I make personally. That used to be the intuition for the driver. Now, my message was completely different. What we're saying is, guys, it's counterintuitive. The more drivers are on the market, in fact, it's better for you because you're going to have less downtime.
Okay.
You shouldn't worry about, the competition from the drivers. The only thing you should be caring is whether Uber does a good job in terms of growing the demand. So, and if we grow the demand, if Uber if Uber does the right thing on growing the demand, then you're going to be good. You're going to be driving lots of people, you're going to be making money. Now, you are right about the point about the car depreciation, and it is a very controversial case. But obviously, I'm never going to deep dive into that with
Yes,
the
I
drivers.
understand. This is not your responsibility.
Of course.
Okay.
I'm not going to, everyone is is an adult, and they do their own math, right? It's a questionable thing. You can read lots of stuff. There's tons of articles on that, researches on Uber in North America, whether it makes sense to drive for Uber or not in terms of, the car depreciation, etc. But this is not about car depreciation. This is only about capacity utilization, and from Uber's point of view, not from kind of the driver's point of view in terms of the total costs. But again, thanks for bringing it up. It is important. It is a good point, guys. I think we need to make break right here, and because we're already a bit past our schedule, can we agree to get back here at
1. If it's big lunch.
5 to 1.
5 to 1.
Yeah, let's do like 5 to 1, maybe 10 to 1. Can you do 10 to 1, please?
Try.
Because it's 5 to 2, I think. Yeah, let's do our best so that we finish on time. Okay? Thank you.
Замовляти за годину в полі.
Наскільки Uber, центральна, як кажуть, вони ж центр розробки, вони знаходяться десь в І наскільки вони взагалі responsive to customization в будь-якій країні Uber виглядає трошки інакше.
Они, ну, как бы респонсив, но это все самопроводится. Ну, то есть это все равно у них делается, именно поэтому это занимает много времени.
Именно
И
поэтому-
unless you really have to kind of, unless it's a really big case, никто этим заниматься не
Но
будет.
даже
Чего
вот
у нас
как появилось,
на
это
машинах
фиксировал
не
Uber. Вот эти цены, которые раньше не было, не называлось сразу поездка.
Да,
А
конечно.
потом только появилось.
Да, это потом появился централизованный подход, что это на, да, видишь, на всех, ну, на всех где это возможно, да.
Але зараз, типа, Uber трохи програє в Азії, бо там в Азії буде специфіка і Get, здається, не Get, а може інше, що типу вони там мають специфічні послуги, це не все таке.
Grab.
Grab, да.
Так он вышел из Азии. Grab, Uber продал свой бизнес Grab. Мы потом об этом можем поговорить и рассказать.
Там, наприклад, послуга, типу, що відправляєш друзям номер машини, типу, щоб для безпеки, типу, воно каже, який так хтось...
Так в Uber это 100 лет как бы.
Да?
Более того, в Uber,
Да?
в Uber было не
а
то, что
надо
отправляешь номер, в Uber можно
Да.
показать человеку, где ты едешь в текущий момент времени.
А чого нас вирішили писати от Uber на машину? Це піздець.
Реклама?
Чого ніде не
Не, есть. В России делалось. Можно делать? Нет, в некоторых рынках делалось. Реклама. А это уже вопрос, запрещено или нет. Если здесь, я же говорю, здесь в этом плане хороший дикий рынок, почему бы не воспользоваться этим?
Просто, ну, в моєму розумінні, що от Uber